Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Wednesday, May 6th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Today we do a bit of campaign talk. In particular, we'll talk about my first edition Grymvald campaign. I ran another session last night. I use Roll20. I used to use a Discord chat. Last night we attempted just using the voice and also video chat that is native to Roll20. And after working around a few things, we figured it out, got it going just fine. So I think going forward, we will probably just stick with strictly Roll20 and not couple ourselves with the added Discord voice and chat, voice chat, and possibly video. Those work great too. But now that Roll20 has seemingly worked out the kinks in its own video and voice chat, that seems to be a little more responsive, less lag, more. It's one less program, obviously, to deal with, which is important. Anytime you can remove any variables from what you're running as far as the technology is concerned, that's always a good thing. It creates less problems. You've got 3, 4, 5, 6 people involved, and any one of them could have different systems or browsers they're using, which cause different difficulties in making any one, let alone 2, programs work in sync with everyone else. So cutting down on the number of things you have to have up and running, the better, in my opinion. Probably true just in general. My Grymvald campaign takes place on the northern peninsula, for the most part, of a southern continent of a world that I've been building and running since 1974, when D&D first came on the scene. Back in those days, of course, the prevailing wisdom in the 3 little booklets was that you'd have a DM take the time to create some sort of world, generally starting with a small village or town and adding a local quote-unquote dungeon, some place to go exploring beneath the surface of the world. And that way you have a home base for everyone to go to and from to garner supplies and support, and a place to continually foray into to gain treasure and experience. And my world was no different than that. One of the other players back in '74, when we started, a buddy of mine named Jerry, was our first DM, but it wasn't long after that because of the number of times that we wished to play, it was convenient to have 2, 3, sometimes even up to 4 people DMing at different times, so that we could get a lot of play in, but the DMs would still have plenty of time to prepare adventures, prepare places to explore. As I recall, I was the second one to jump on this, since Jerry was our first. He ran a great little world. He had a great dungeon, which he had dubbed Tantalus, after the person from Greek mythology. It's a good name. It's part of why I also, in homage to him, have since dubbed my underworld Tartarus, after the underworld in Greek mythology as well. But of course, very different from that. Tartarus in name only, I suppose, and related to the original Greek myth only in that it is also an underworld. Doesn't have the same structure. It's a lot looser. It is many, many locations beneath the surface that are often connected through tendrils of tunnels and caverns that honeycomb the entire world. In the current campaign, takes place in the Ronkian Empire, down in the sort of southwest corner. I think I have another map I can show you. I've set it in the village of Laidlaw, which, if you can see my cursor on the screen, is down southwest near Colwayn's Coves, at the far western end of West Spurnol. The group has gone to a place, started actually, because this is a pickup campaign we've created to play online. Several of the people in this group had been playing in a face-to-face campaign for nearly a year and a half at the game store, Lake Geneva Games here in Lake Geneva. We would attempt to play weekly. It would wind up playing 2 or 3 times a month once scheduling conflicts and other events would sometimes take us away, weather included. When we first started, we were plagued by bad weather in early 2019. Almost invariably on Tuesdays we would get huge snowstorms and would have to cancel close to the last minute. But we prevailed, started with first edition, first level characters, built them up over time. Number of unfortunate deaths along the way, but people adding in new characters. One of the things, and this is a good campaign talk tip that I do, one of the things I do to keep a campaign moving along and keep boredom from setting in with players, is to not require players to always go back to first level if their character dies. Certainly, if the rest of the characters are second or third level, it's not a huge burden on them, nor is it that difficult for the player with the first level character to bring it up to speed fairly quickly. But because we had regular attendance and most people were leveling pretty close to the same time, in the same on the same sort of schedule, one of the things I've liked to do with campaigns is allow any new character that comes in to have the amount of experience that the least experienced player character in the group has. Now, it's not always the same right across the board, because every now and then one player might miss a game session while the others get a few hundred here, 1,000 there, sometimes more. So there would be some lag occasionally, but everybody misses sooner or later and it more or less evens out. There's always 1 or 2 players that never miss, and when that happens, of course, they're usually the ones that advance a little faster or get a little higher. But because of the uneven leveling of characters, character classes in first edition AD&D, you still got some range of character levels. I think when we finished up in just before GaryCon in early March and concluded that campaign, or that leg of the larger campaign, the characters were somewhere in the vicinity of 6th, 7th, and 8th level. And of course then world events took us in a new direction, and we had to deal with the world health crisis. And while we were doing that, we we found that, or I found that, if this thing was going to drag on, I wanted to continue to run a campaign, even if it was virtually rather than face to face, which is generally my preference. So I talked to the players from the campaign. We had started with 10. We were down to 8 by the end of the campaign. I talked to all of them and invited them all to join in a online game. I selected Roll20 in part because it's the most popular virtual tabletop. Definitely with an eye toward wanting to have what had been most tested, and also the easiest for gaining additional players if we needed them, and the least buggy. I understand Fantasy Grounds has been around quite a long time and has had a lot of its own kinks worked out and works very fantastic by all accounts. But Roll20 was one that I had tried out back in 2012, so it was easy enough for me to pick that back up and start learning the things I never learned the first time around when I was just toying around with it, and also to bring other people on board with it and bring everyone up to speed as quickly as possible. We're still in the process. Make no mistake, there's stuff about Roll20 we don't take advantage of just yet. Most notably dynamic lighting, because it hadn't yet come up, but it will be coming up probably with the next game session, so it's something we're going to have to integrate pretty quick if we're going to make the most of using this virtual tabletop. So when starting up this campaign, there was some thinking that we didn't want to use the characters that we had used from our previous campaign. Should we get back to that, it would be nice if all the players who would then be rejoining weren't left in the dust by anybody who had been playing online for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, however long this lasts. And so we set those 6th, 7th, 8th level characters aside, and my thinking was, with the learning of a new way of doing the running the game using Roll20, we'd want to have lower level characters at first, and it was a good thought. I thought about starting from scratch with first level characters. That seemed like it wouldn't be exciting enough for us at this point. I looked at third level pre-gens, and I settled on utilizing some 5th level pre-generated characters that we have available to us, and that's worked out pretty well. They're not so far behind what they used to be. They are new characters, and while they are becoming characters that they appreciate and treasure, at least for now, they're not so attached that if something terrible happens to one of them, they're going to be all that upset with switching over to something else, getting a new character, if it comes to it. We started in a little town called the village of Laidlaw. It was beset by villains from a neighboring kingdom, that of Pargon, to the northwest. The men-at-arms from the nobles in Pargon had been raiding across the border for a couple of years, and in essence, many of them had settled in on Laidlaw, extorting money from the local populace and keeping them oppressed. So, when our heroes began visiting Laidlaw, they discovered very quickly that some changes could be in order if they wanted to muster the courage and eject these Pargonian wolves. And they decided that's what they would do. Now, surprisingly, to me, this has been a little less heroic and a little more mercenary in that not a lot of quarter has been given to individuals that they've been dealing with. There were over 3 dozen of these Pargonian men-at-arms around town, loosely organized. They seem to be mostly running as independent agents, very chaotic, doing what they please at any given time. In that regard, they were less organized and easier for a band of 5, it was at first, players. We had 4 last night, player characters, to deal with them. But we're talking first and second level men-at-arms against a handful of fourth and fifth level. There's a couple of dual class 4/4. There's a fourth fighter magic user, 5th level cleric, 5th level fighter. Last night, 4th level halfling fighter, thief. So these guys are individually not having a lot of competition here, but when good numbers of decently armed second level men-at-arms start to swarm a party of that size, when they've been nipped away at, hurt, and lower on spells, it can be quite dangerous. And they had their hands full. But they managed to vanquish the 3 dozen plus by taking out 20 roughly of their number and chasing the rest off. So the question in the campaign then became, do they follow up, chase them to the border and beyond, and make sure they don't return to the northwest? Or do they perhaps head back east into West Bernal further, head west, maybe down to Colwayn's Coves, or check across the river down to the south into the wilds of the hills that are skirting the Argarian mountains and find these lumber camps? And beyond that, they heard rumors of a swampy area in which there is a small island accessible by a causeway. Shades of first edition sample dungeon right there. Ruined monastery, and of course dungeon underneath. Now that description is where the similarities end. It is but a homage to the sample dungeon. What is beneath is not what comes from the DMG, so that won't be something that they could get any spoilers of or would be familiar with. It's a dungeon of my own devising. It's pretty solid. I need to make some adjustments to the map to deal with the virtual tabletop format. I need to work it up in such a way that it can be used with the dynamic lighting fairly easily. So even though this is a dungeon I created long ago and have used numerous times over the last few decades in different campaigns, it'll probably need some fresh adjustments to best suit the virtual tabletop. And it'll be fun cleaning it up, making it fresh again, It gives me the opportunity to reacquaint myself with what I had in the past, while at the same time also adding in some new tricks and traps and ideas that may have come up over the years, or that I may get in inspiration in the moment while making the changes. So I'm looking forward to doing all of that over the next week as I get it prepared. I'm also assuming that as I make these changes, I'll be having the actual current player characters in mind. Now, there's something I don't often like to do, is to create something with the specific current player characters in mind, because then it starts to feel as if the world is reacting to them with malice aforethought. I don't want the tricks, traps, and various things that they run into to be things they think were put there purposefully to thwart them precisely. I would rather have the world be more static, in that this underground beneath this monastery, the crypts that are there, and other things beneath, are meant within the world ecology, history, to have been there for many, many years, many centuries, in fact, for something to pop up within that seems specifically designed to counter something that the current player characters might bring to bear, just would feel capricious. It would seem as if adversarial, and I've never advocated for a dungeon master, game master in any RPG to be an adversarial position. It's meant to be strictly a neutral referee, in the naming of original D&D. A referee, someone to adjudicate the interactions of the player characters, of the players through their player characters, with the world, the setting, and the system. Just being the eyes and ears, letting them know what they see, letting them take actions, and then either logically determining what the results would be, or to randomize from some potential results the consequences to those actions. Let them take that in, along with any other data, information, whatever their senses can bring them, and let them then take more actions. It's a constant action and consequences, actions and consequences. And it's best if, in my opinion, if it's just the DM adjudicating what happens and letting things go where they will within the setting. There's also the idea that if you're creating stuff specific to the player characters that are in your current campaign, then you're also rewriting, or pre-writing rather, the story geared toward them. And I'm also not a DM who wants to be a narrator or a storyteller in that sense. I'm a DM who wants story to be a byproduct of gameplay. There's no story in my worlds or in my games except retroactively. Once the players have interacted with the game world, whatever the results, that is the story. It might not always be the most satisfying of stories. One might be able to tell a tale of how one died to a dragon with a little less satisfaction than how one defeated a dragon. But in the end, they're both stories, and they're both good stories. They're just not the same stories, and there's no predetermined victor in any given situation or moment within gameplay. And that's important to me. The chips fall where they may, and whatever the results are becomes the story that one can take away from that particular game. I've always enjoyed those more. They also allow for the players to have the absolute most agency. Now, I think there's some sense that there's never any perfect agency in a game. If there's any randomness, dice rolls, then things are going to happen that are not in control of neither the players nor the dungeon master. And it's also important that when that is the case, things aren't geared for the players in such a way that they believe everything is, that you've padded all the corners or you've taken all the sharp edges off so they can't hurt themselves. Because that's a very unsatisfying game, in my opinion, when I'm a player. I don't like to know when I jump into a game of Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, and I know I'm going to be playing for a little while, for, say, at a one-shot at a convention, that I'm definitely going to live to the end of the session. I like to know that there's randomness and the chance of loss, because it makes the gains that much more satisfying. Well, JSO28 jumped into the chat here. Thank you very much for joining the channel for today. Don't forget to follow it. We do a drawing every week. This week for a set of dice. And as long as you've followed the channel and have spoken up in a chat during a live stream, you're eligible for the drawing and potentially the giveaway, which we do at the end of each week. We announce that on Mondays. So I will add you into the list of potential recipients of the giveaway. And should it come to pass, maybe you'll get lucky. There we go. All set. You're on the list. Currently up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got 10 people on the list currently from this week so far, and I'm sure we'll have a few more before the end, but pretty good chance. This is week 6. There's a set of charcoal polyhedral D&D RPG dice. There are 10 dice in the set rather than just 7 because it includes 4 6-siders. Additionally, there's an extra D20 on offer with this set. I wonder if I got a little picture of this I can share. Let's see. I think this one ought to do. Let's bring it up. Alright. The Navy set was given away just a couple of days ago on Monday. The charcoal set on the far left is the last one available, but a very nice set. As I said, it's a 10-piece. They are what they call pearlized. They have a sort of a pearlescent look to them, as you can see from the far left set of charcoal ones, which are the ones that are on offer this week. That 20-sider in front, also included in the giveaway. You'll find that there's one extra special thing about this giveaway in that because I'm in Lake Geneva, I'll take these sets down to the Gary Gygax Memorial Stone down by the fountain near the Riviera. Currently fenced away. I've got to go get a look down there and see if they've cleared away the fences so I can get those to the stone. And I'll take a picture of them. They will thus be, as they say, blessed by Gary for having been on the stone, with proof of it in a picture. And then provided you're in the continental 48 contiguous United States, I'll be able to ship those to you after that's been done. If you're outside of that, I'm afraid the cost of shipping is so ridiculous right now that I can't do that myself. But if you wish to cover the shipping yourself and you're outside the 48 states, then you can certainly still win them. It's just up to you to cover the shipping. So we will see how that goes. But that's for anybody who follows the channel and speaks up in the chat during a live stream, as you've already done. So just follow and you'll be in. The campaign discussion today has involved the village of Laidlaw, the Grymvald setting, in my current first edition virtual tabletop game on Roll20 with what were 4 players last night around 5th level. Well, I think we've exhausted that for the day, so we will just take a quick look at the schedule before we go. We have Grymvald Discussion on Wednesday. As you may have noted, every Monday we do weekly news and giveaway announcement, as I was saying yesterday. Cartography and world building. Wednesday, campaign discussion, usually Grymvald campaign discussion, my own setting. Tomorrow, Thursday, we're trying something new with some crafting and painting. I've got some 3D printed dungeon tiles from a friend of mine, Sarah, who passed those on to me from a friend of hers who had printed a bunch up but then went a different direction with their game. So I was thinking, well, I should probably uniformly paint these up. They're mostly cavern pieces, something I didn't have a lot of before. So it'll be fun to have those, and it'll be nice to paint them. I think they're all already primed and ready to go, so I look forward to that. On Friday, another new segment we'll be doing is building virtual tabletop adventures. We'll talk about adventure creation with an eye toward using that adventure in virtual tabletops, creating pages and making sure that you have, even in a sandbox campaign, the right tools to handle an adventure that's being run, even if the players opt to take a left turn on you. On Saturday, we do a animated short, a cartoon running review, essentially from a DM's perspective. We've been going through the catalog of Dungeons & Dragons animated series cartoons. I think we've done 6 so far, so number 7 will be this week. We'll keep going through 9 since there's 27 of them. There are 9 on a disc in a 3-disc set. So we'll knock out the first 9 before switching things up. I've got on the back burner season 1 of the Conan animated series also available to me, so I'm thinking checking some of those out will be fun as well, just to see visually what sort of things one can glean from them as a dungeon master to possibly transfer into your RPGing. On Sunday, we do a rules retrospective, since I mainly run and play in first edition Dungeons & Dragons games, advanced Dungeons & Dragons games. Um, there are always things to look at with the rules. Last week we looked at initiative. There's been some talk in this intervening week about a number of attacks for fighter types. And there's some confusion because that has changed from edition to edition to exactly how that works. So maybe that's something to check out this Sunday as well. So we don't have to stick with just one topic. We can add several smaller topics into that discussion, and I'll be keeping my eye out. If you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know, and we might be able to include them either in the coming week or some subsequent week as part of that rules retrospective. That's pretty much the schedule. We do this 9:30 a.m. 7 days a week, so please do feel free to join us. I want to thank everybody who's joined in, and welcome little JSO28 today in particular, and everybody who watches this also on YouTube. Don't forget, if you see it on YouTube, subscribe to the Mark CMG channel there, and make sure you like or dislike if you feel it's warranted the particular video. Feel free to make comments. I'll try to answer them when I get the chance. If you're checking this out in Twitch or plan to, be sure to follow the channel and speak up in the chat during the stream, because that's the way to be included as part of the weekly giveaway, which is worthwhile and always interesting. Once I go through these dice sets, Thaddeus Patches Moore has said that he will supply a set of his old school Renaissance patches. There's 3 of them. The Blue Dungeon, a straight out OSR patch, and then one that's reminiscent of the great opening sword icon that's in Conan, the original Conan movie. So those are fun. If you like patches, put them on your backpack, a jacket, on hats, however you want to use them. Thaddeus Moore made these things. They're fantastic. I really love them. And in future weeks, I've got a number of things around here that I can include. I've got some Hildebrandt Brothers posters. I've got I've got a lot of things. I'll dig stuff up. We'll start suggesting what'll be coming up in future weeks. So, with all that, again, I want to thank everybody who's enjoying the OK Grognard show, and hopefully you'll return soon. Check it out again. Have a great day.